spoilers? Oh, lots and lots of spoilers.
Hello. Welcome to Max Mike Movies. White people. Aren't they great? I mean, aren't they just the best? They are just so neat and clean and just swell. You can find them all over the place. Why would you need any other kind of people, especially in movies? White people can do anything. They can play any role, any race, any color. Why on earth would you want to hire, something crazy like a person of color to play a person of color? Are you a big silly? Are you crazy? Do you hate white people? Is that it? Welcome to our latest series, Whitewashing.
Wow.
Here we're tackling a subject that's a bit more uncomfortable than a lot of our others. Hollywood's long and continuing history of having white actors play characters who are written as people of color. Yes, we're talking about white actors wearing blackface, yellowface, red face, all faces of people who actually exist, have their own faces, and could have been hired for these parts, but weren't. This week's entry is one of the more egregious examples of a white actor playing an Asian character. No, not that one. No, not that one either.
But what about...
No, not that one. You know, this one is just one of the very egregious ones, okay? It's 1961's A Majority of One, an admittedly charming film about two unlikely friends who start up an unexpected romance. One is a middle-aged Jewish woman from Brooklyn by way of Russia, played by noted not-a-Jew Rosalind Russell, and the other is a stately Japanese businessman played by Alec Guinness. No, I didn't say that wrong. Alec Bloody Knight of the Realm Guinness plays Koichi Asano in this movie.
Well, it is true from a certain point of view.
Shut up! Oh boy. Let us check our modern sensibilities at the door and dive right in, shall we? I'm one of your hosts, wearing full Muramochi parade armor, Max Hideyoshi Levine. And over there, dressed rather tastelessly as a Hasidic rabbi, is your other host, Mike Shlomo Luce.
Can I have this pork?
How you doing, Shlomo? Yeah, why not? I don't know.
Yeah. I think I'll have some bacon-wrapped shrimp. That sounds pretty good.
Yeah,
Actually, it does sound pretty good.
Actually,
your opening
really
is
good.
Frighteningly accurate, Max.
Yeah, I know. It took me a while, but yeah, we are dealing, and this is, I'm sorry, this is going to be a really uncomfortable series in general, because it's really embarrassing for white people, and I realize this may come as a shock to our longtime viewers who no doubt haven't been able to guess, but Mike and I are both white.
Shh! They weren't supposed to know!
I know. Try to control your shock, but yes. Although I'm told being Jewish, I don't really count as white, but whatever.
And who better to point these things out than white people?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're here to save all you ethnic people. Oh, God.
Hey, at least we're sorry.
Yeah.
We're not even Canadian.
Now,
is that a race?
Sorry. Yeah, this is a practice that's been going on in Hollywood pretty much since as long as there's been a Hollywood.
But at least it's over.
Casting. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's the sad part. We're going to have some movies that are annoyingly recent. This ain't over by a long shot. But before we get to this, let's talk about last week's poll question.
Ooh.
And that was, who was your favorite Polish prime minister? And I believe most people have been going for Václav Havel, but wrong poll? Sorry.
Once again,
yes.
We're doing a series on whitewashing.
Right. So how many polls does it take to... Sorry.
I will end you.
Yeah. Our last week's question was, is there a movie that you think loses impact by being seen on the small screen? And is there a movie you were really glad you saw in the theater or wish you had seen there? We got a lot of responses on this. Got one from Jamie Kleinert. Her answer is Star Wars. especially the opening of New Hope. Seeing that in the theater in '97, oh, what a child. The Lord of the Rings series and Jurassic Park. Those are, I can't argue with any of those. Those are all really good choices. From our boy on the West Coast, Dave! He makes an interesting point. I go to the movie theaters to get out and make the event more special. The story is the reason I watch movies. If the movie isn't strong on the small screen, it means the story is too weak. The only exception that comes to mind is the Rocky Horror Picture Show, where one goes to be in the audience. It's an interesting point. I don't know if I entirely agree. I think if a movie is enough of a spectacle, there are plenty of impressive-looking movies with remarkably weak stories that do look good on the big screen. Then when you watch them on TV, you're like, wow, I enjoyed this.
The term you're looking for, Max, is splody.
Splody, yes. More kabooms. Yeah. From Matt Reisman, we have there are two that immediately come to mind. A Quiet Place. That's interesting. There's something about the focus of being in a theater, the inability to pause and escape tension that really benefited this movie. That's a good point about scary movies or thrillers. Seeing them in a theater, you don't have control. You can leave the theater, but you can't hit pause or, take another hit off your bong or whatever.
Yeah, Blair Witch Project was the quietest audience I've ever been.
Oh, Lord, yeah. The other is Avatar. It's a pretty middling movie, but the spectacle made it engrossing. It does not hold up on a small screen without it. I think that's probably true. I wasn't impressed on the large screen, but I've heard a lot of people say they were just blown away by how it looked, and it doesn't work on the small screen.
I used the word hate, but let's move on.
Entering the Loose family tree, we have Val. Yes. Gosh, pretty much any blockbuster film. Yeah, that's what we were just saying. The splody ones. They're made to be seen and heard huge. Specifically, I'd say Star Wars. Yes, I mean Episode 4. To me, it's still just Star Wars.
Good for her.
Cannot argue with that. She then thought of another one later, Dances with Wolves. Also impressive on the big screen. Dan Schaefer, offers up Lawrence of Arabia. That was going to be one of my choices. It's a gorgeous long shot of Lawrence riding toward the camera across the desert. And on the small screen, you can't even see him until halfway through the shot. That is true.
Yeah. I got lucky on that one. I actually got to see it in 70, an original 70 print.
Yeah.
It's actually, I think, the only way I've seen it. Yeah.
That is the best way to see it. Jessica Miller writes, I know it's cheesy, but Titanic was the first movie that came to mind. Seeing the size of the boat and the size of the iceberg on the big screen just made it a bit more real, if you will. That is true. I agree with that because it's... First of all, I still maintain the best character in the movie is the boat, and it looks much better on the big screen.
I don't know. The performance by that iceberg was pretty good.
Yeah, but it's practically
Did he leave
a cameo.
you cold?
Yeah. That will cause... that. You are now in the negative Bumpy Bucks region. Geneva Brunetti says Moulin Rouge. Aside from the opening and closing literally incorporating the theater, nice point, and the theater being so integral visually and plot-wise, it's just a sensory orgy, that is best experienced when it's all around you.
Yeah, I actually remember the opening of that film, because I don't like musicals in general, and I think I went because Nicole Kidman and Ewan McGregor, it's like, really? Yeah, sure, what the heck? And Baz Luhrmann, because I liked Baz Luhrmann.
Sure.
Until he did Great American Novel, Great Gatsby, which was... He should have taken it farther. If Great Gatsby had been like a rap movie, that would have been awesome. I would have loved that. And I don't even like rap. But the first 15, 20 minutes of Moulin Rouge, I was tired. I was breathless. That thing just hits you and pummels you. And it was great. So I totally agree with that.
Yep. And from our foreign contingent, Vince, what movie loses impact outside the movie theater? All of them. I'll say I hate 3D, but I do like IMAX for some films. Gravity, for example, was amazing on the super big screen. Ooh, that would be really impressive in IMAX. I have it on Blu-ray, but nothing beats that opening shot on a large screen with an audience gasping around you. That is actually a good point that both he and Dave make, is that part of the advantage of going to the theater is simply having the crowd around you. I remember watching Jaws, and in one of the jump scares with the shark, feeling the entire row of seats I was sitting in, jerk backwards as the whole theater slammed back in their seats, going, ah!
And every single bolt was sheared off its screw.
Yeah, almost. I was expecting it to snap off.
Yeah.
Are there any that you think of that weren't mentioned?
A very recent film, 1917, I honestly don't think it would carry. And here's something that I think is kind of interesting about that, in that a lot of the films we're talking about have big things in them, be it space or an iceberg, a giant cruise line. Basically, the film is trying to depict something larger than life. 1917, the larger than life part is really the war itself, so it's almost an abstract thing, but seeing the character and all of that around him, some of which over there is fighting and some of which over there is fighting back and stuff, besides the fact that there's literally no cuts in the film, I honestly don't think that you would get the same impact. That being said, yeah, splody movies, because they want you to feel in that giantness, whatever it is. Frickin' Cameron and his stupid blue monkey planet, whatever it was. Cats!
Planet of the Smurfs.
Yeah, but like, I haven't seen it, but my guess is My Dinner with Andre doesn't really need to be on a giant screen. Just, How about you?
No, I think most people covered them. I got to say, any of the Merchant Ivory movies I like to see on the big screen, just because the landscape and the interiors are so much a part of the movie. They're practically additional characters.
Is he the Shipping News? Did he do that one?
Merchant and Ivory? No, that's two people, and I don't think they did the Shipping News.
It's not him, huh?
It's not Merchant Ivory. It's Merchant and Ivory.
I thought it was a person.
Yeah, well, his friends call him Merch. Yeah.
Oh, can you name one?
Yeah,
can you name a Merchant and Ivory film?
Remains of the Day. I think they did Sense and Sensibility with Ang Lee.
Those. Howard's End, would that be one of them?
Yeah, I think that might be them too. They're very, very English, oh dear, I have dropped the tea cozy. That is the central conflict.
Oh dear, something almost happened. Well, shall we move on?
So thank you again, folks, for all your great responses. That was terrific. I hope you keep them coming. There will be a vast distribution of Bumpy Bucks to you.
Tons.
Except that the server that controls the Bumpy Bucks NFTs has crashed, and so they are all worthless now. Aww. So until we spin up a new server, I think that, because I'm almost sure that's how it works, then...
we'll have to get Bumpy on a big wheel.
Yeah, I'm in favor of that.
Trots for tokens. I just made that up.
It shows. For next week's question, this is more of a location question. Is there a particular country where you really enjoy seeing movies set? Which one and why? And is there one you'd like to see show up in more movies? Is you really into movies in Sri Lanka or movies in Dubuque? As God knows, the Dubuque film series that's a stunner.
Don't you mean, is there a white country that you like? No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, yeah. And we'll tell you at the later on where you can post your responses if you haven't already figured that out, which, judging by your responses, you have. But we'll do it anyway because we enjoy it.
Yes. But next, we have trivia. The show.
There isn't a whole lot about this movie in of itself. There's a little about who was in it, but anyway, this film has a couple of other people who this was their last movie. Alan Mowbray, who plays Captain Norcross, the police prefect. He's one of those guys. If you watch old movies, you'll go, "Oh, that guy." You've seen him in everything. This was his last role in a 30-year career. Also, the actress Leota Lorraine, who played the diplomat's wife.
Wait.
Now, this movie was...
Wasn't she Mrs. Drysdale?
No, she looks like her, but that is not Mrs. Drysdale.
Oh, man, I swore it was her.
Yeah.
Milburn!
No. This movie is based on a play by a guy named Leonard Spiegelgrass, which opened at the Schubert Theater in New York City in 1959, starring Gertrude Berg, who was at least Jewish, and Cedric Hardwicke, who was in no way Japanese, and ran for 556 performances. Two of the actors from this play, Tsuroko Kobayashi, who's Mr. Asano's daughter-in-law, and Mae Questel, who is Essie, Mrs. Jacoby's friend, were in the stage show. They recreated the roles in the play. By the way, if Essie's voice, Mae Questel's voice, sounds familiar.
Oh yes,
Yep, I'm sure you knew it right away. She was the voice of Betty Boop and Olive Oil in the old Popeye cartoons.
I hate to stop you, but Harriet E. McGibbon, was in fact Mrs. Drysdale.
I am caught in a lie. Ha! I hope my life is a lie.
That's her last movie because she was still working up till 1980.
Oh.
But yeah,
okay.
Weird.
Cool, Mrs. Drysdale. This movie was actually nominated for an Oscar for, ironically, Best Color Cinematography.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Well, white's a color.
This movie, this is again how deep they were trying to dig for trivia. This movie depicts the passage to Japan from San Francisco on the ship the SS President Hoover. This was a real ocean liner with that name. It was plying the Pacific routes. However, it ran aground off Taiwan in 1937 and was so damaged it was scrapped in place. In 1930, when it was built, it was the largest commercial ship in the U.S. Fascinating.
This was a dream or what? Huh? Twilight Zone?
No, it was.
No, like if they were on that ship, but the ship actually sunk in 30s. Ooh.
Yep. This whole thing happened in a time warp. When Mrs. Jacoby visits the house of Mr. Asano, the man who answers the door should look very familiar. Although he is not credited and he has no lines in English, it's George Takei. Oh my. Mr. Sulu of Star Trek.
At least I'm playing a Japanese captain.
Yeah, oh boy. Some of what I have here is, I had read his autobiography or one of his several, and he talks about being in this movie. And he also has been interviewed about this. He said, quote, they hired a Japanese accent language coach and he had some Japanese dialect. So the language coach was there to work with Alec Guinness. Alec ignored him completely.
What?
The coach said, Mr. Guinness doesn't want to use me. And he used his own slurry idea of what a Japanese accent is. And I noticed he used the same accent in Passage to India when he played an Indian man.
Oh, dear.
Yeah. He's all in full makeup and he comes out looking like a reptile. He's supposed to be a warm character and he played him as a cold aristocrat. We have a history of that sort of thing, and it's now being replicated with CGI. We haven't made any progress yet. So George did not enjoy this. He apparently, later, other parts of the book, he sort of tried to approach Alec Guinness about, maybe you don't want to have your eyes taped like that, and Sir Alec, was having none of it.
Yeah.
A couple of the reviews of the time, a film critic in the New York Times, this is in 1961, called the film a truly heartwarming and entertaining affair, and opined that it was truly satisfying work largely because the combination of funny and apt dialogue and the dedicated cast gave it dignity. Largely due to Russell's convincing performance as a self-sufficient Brooklyn dowager, although he thought that Mr. Guinness still appeared to be closer to London than Tokyo. Okay, that's nicely conceded. And this from Variety, this one is everything that's wrong with the time. Leonard Spiegelgas's brew of schmaltz and sukiyaki is an outstanding film. Russell's Yiddish hexent, which is actually spelled Hex-cent, though at times sounds like what it is, a Christian imitating a Jew. Not a Gentile, a Christian, is close enough to the genuine article. Guinness becomes Japanese through physical suggestion and masterful elocution. What the hell were you thinking?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe he didn't see the movie. I got to say, I would say that in this case, Mr. Guinness was not so much closer to London as maybe Mos Eisley, but there you go.
Yeah. He would have been more appropriate telling some kid, he doesn't like you.
I don't like you either.
I don't like you either. Yeah. And that's pretty much all the trivia that I could find on it. There's not a lot about it except for the obvious stuff.
Yeah. There's another Star Trek alum in here.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes. It was the daughter.
Yep.
Alice. That was. I have that in my notes. Sorry.
Madeleine Roux.
Go ahead.
She played Marla MacGyver from Space Seed, one of the best known Star Trek, the original Star Trek episodes.
Was she the Federation officer that Khan ends up hooking up with?
You mean Khan's Cheeky Poo? Yes, she was.
Yes.
Yeah. Actually, it was a very big part for a guest star. And it was, very well remembered episode. So, two Star Trek alum, the helmsman and the Khan's Cheeky Poo. That was
and there is an alumnus of another brilliant television show, and that was Jerry Black, the son-in-law of Mrs. Jacoby's son-in-law, played by Ray Danton, who is better known as Secret Agent Super Dragon.
Oh, was he?
From Mystery, which we saw on Mystery Science Theater 3000. He is the star of Secret Agent Super Dragon.
Secret Agent, do-do-do-do, Super Dragon, do-do-do-do-do.
Up-a-da-pa-da-da, sir.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, well, we're not going to be watching that film in this series, and I think we're going to avoid all the Fu Manchu films, too, as well should you.
Yeah.
But that's it for trivia?
Yeah, that's it.
No budget and no take, nothing?
Nope, couldn't find anything on that.
Oh, that's weird. So, how about the plot?
Yep. The plot. A Russian Jewish lady from Brooklyn is Bertha Jacoby New. She lives a fairly insular life, marred by the loss of her son in World War II and her husband to illness less than 4 years ago. All she has now is her daughter Alice and son-in-law Jerry, who turn her world upside down by announcing that they are moving to Japan. Son-in-law is with the State Department, and they want her to come with them. Initially unwilling, as she resents the Japanese for the death of her son, she eventually agrees, eventually being in the same scene. On the boat over, she meets Mr. Asano, a Japanese businessman, and I use the word Japanese loosely, who bears a suspicious resemblance to Obi-Wan Kenobi. While she is cold to him at first, she finds common ground with this man who also lost his children to the war and has also lost his wife to illness. Over the voyage, they become friends, a friendship which deepens when they meet again in Japan, blossoming into something possibly more to the dismay of Mrs. Jacoby's children and a child and in-law. That's pretty much it.
Okay.
The lowdown.
So, Max, when do you... I know you didn't see it when it came out. That would have been impossible.
Yes.
You saw it before this, though. I'm pretty sure you mentioned it.
Yeah, This movie is a little awkward for me, as this movie was beloved by my entire family. My mother showed me this when I was a kid. She showed it to my sister and me when Anne was old enough, and I've seen it several times. I admittedly have not seen it in at least 20, 25 years. So, yeah, I'd seen it several times. And you had too, yes?
Channel 56, I'm sure. One of those afternoons at the movies. My mom loved the film. And I can see why. There are good things about the film. The fact that the two leads are playing things they really shouldn't be playing is a problem. The problem with this movie is the casting director. Whoever did the casting. And apparently... Rosalind Russell didn't want the part. She thought Gertrude Berg from the play should keep it. And the director insisted, and she actually called up Alec Guinness, and they talked it over. I don't know why she didn't try to talk him out of it, but they agreed to do the show. Yeah. It was. I don't think I've seen it since the 70s. It's strange, though. I remember the film really well. The only thing I had forgotten was how long it is. As a child, I'm amazed I watched it because it's 2.5 hours long without ads.
And it's it
must have been.
There's a lot of talking.
Oh dear God, there?
It's based on a play, so the thing is mostly dialogue.
Right, and you can tell. Like there's certain movies when you watch them, by the way they do the blocking and the fewer sets, the less camera movement, you sort of like, oh, this was on stage, wasn't it? It's like, yeah, this was one of those films. We talked about one a while back called The Big Kahuna, which takes place almost entirely in one room. It's like, this was a play. Oh, yep, it certainly was. So, the opening of the film, though, I don't know if you got the same laugh that I did, but the film opens and there are two sculpted busts of the two main characters. One of them is Mrs. Jacoby, and the other one is Mr. Asano. And the one of Mr. Asano gave me flashbacks to an episode of MASH where they're buying a carving of Colonel Potter for his anniversary.
Yeah.
And
it looks like you.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, it looks just like that one guy from MASH who was supposed to be Korean, and I think he was Chinese, but who knows. So I started laughing at that. And then I looked through the credits, and it's like, oh, look, there actually is one Japanese person listed in the credits.
Yeah.
Even though, a good chunk of the film takes place. Well, actually, for about a third of the
No,
film.
I don't think any of it actually takes place in Japan. All I could think of is when they get off the boat, well, we sure are in Japan. Can't believe how much Japan this is.
To be fair, I didn't believe it was a boat, and I didn't believe it was New York. So, although I will say my first thought when they got off the boat was, oh, dear gods, finally they're off the boat. That was the longest, dullest trip ever.
They're on, I think about half an hour of the movie takes place on the boat. The movie is 2.5 hours long, by the way.
Yeah, and they're mean because they sit there and show you, oh, we're starting off over. They take a flight to San Francisco. Okay, fine, that happens. But then they show you a map. We left. We're on the pier. Here we are in the boat, and the boat is leaving San Francisco. It's like, okay, cool. The next time you see the boat, it's a quarter of an inch out into the Pacific. And it's like, oh dear gods, we're 4 months. How long were they on that boat?
God knows. It was a slow boat to Japan, in effect.
Just to point something out just for fun, because you mentioned Super Agent Secret Dragon or whatever that kid is. Ray Danton, his first role was in a movie that actually could have been in this series. It was a movie called Chief Crazy Horse. He played as a Native American in that. So I'm willing to bet there are no Native Americans in that film. I didn't see it, but yeah. We'll be talking about some of that.
It's not quite as bad as like having Chuck Connors as playing Geronimo with his bright blue eyes.
I'm going to go with yes, it is. It's just as bad. There's nothing about Ray Danton that looks in any way anything but pasty. Yeah, Danton, the home of happiness. That's a deeper. So my first... let's talk about the performances. My first note for the wonderful Miss Not Jew was so much Jewish she's making. Oi! How did you feel about the performance?
Oh, boy. She was a cartoon.
Yeah.
Now, I have got to give props to Rosalind Russell, a nice Irish Catholic girl who probably met a few Jews in her time, but I don't know if she grew up with any. She does the accent okay. It's just she lays it on so thick. Some of this is her, and some of it is the writing, because they use every possible cliche: the insular nature, the suspicion of outsiders, the fact that she tells these long, meandering stories to get to a point, the fact that she's actually a shrewd businesswoman, because God knows we're all so good with money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hers is kind of annoying. It isn't, I think, the sheer racist train wreck that Alec Guinness is.
Yeah.
Because, oh my God, can we talk about the accent?
Well, yes. Well, what about that accent, Max?
Well, I don't know what part of Japan he's supposed to be from, but it's not one I've ever heard in a movie, TV show, or from a Japanese person.
Downtown.
Yeah, you talk very like it is. George Takei described it's a slurry. It's just this mumbling, not opening his mouth all the way, just doing the classic switching up the L's and the R's. I mean, one of the big jokes is the hard when Mrs. Jacoby is saying the hardest word in English is the, and she was of Russian descent, and it's possibly true. The th phoneme isn't very common in Russian. It's like Russian has all these phonemes we don't have at all. But he says, no, the most difficult word in English is lollipop. Like, oh, God. Yeah, my sides.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the background music you get anytime they're in Japan, they don't quite go to dun 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 bong, but it's just this side of it.
I mean, they don't literally do that. And to be fair, there's nobody with like coolie hats and all bent over and bowing all the time stuff. It's not that bad.
That's Chinese, yeah.
It doesn't matter. They wouldn't have cared.
Yeah, true.
But yeah, and it just... it does really seriously make me question Alec Guinness as an actor. Because even if he had gotten an accent correctly, which he doesn't... whereas I'm willing, like you, to believe Rosalind Russell might actually have met a Jewish person in her life, a Jewish person in the show business. This is a thing that could happen. I honestly don't think Alec Guinness, and by his actions, according to George Takei, not only hasn't met any Japanese people, he doesn't want to meet Japanese people.
Yeah, you do get that feeling. It may be unfair to the late Sir Alec, but that is how it comes across.
Yeah.
And again, I agree. The whole idea is Mr. Asano is supposed to be, the character is supposed to be this warm, wise guy. And he's not just the makeup, but the way he carries himself is so rigid. And so the face is scary.
Yeah.
The makeup, the way they emphasize the cheekbones, they do make him look reptilian.
Well, he also has this weird smile all the time, which really doesn't help.
No.
Maybe he's one of those actors who doesn't like to see their own performances, but in this case, he really should have.
And when you see him in the scenes with the two other Japanese people in the movie, it's even worse. With the servant, with George Takei, or with his daughter-in-law, who does, I don't think has a name. She's just my daughter-in-law.
Well, he throws something at her once. I know that.
Yeah.
His clothes. Hey, I'd like to bring up something real quick. So, Max, the opening quote of the film, I know we're talking about the performances, but there was an opening quote that I think is supposed to set the mood. It's supposed to give us an idea of why this play or this movie was written. And it's supposed to be one of those, I don't know, wise sayings that make you go, oh, and nod your head. And then keep nodding your head, and your brow furrows, and you suddenly realize you have no idea what the heck it means. The opening quote of the film, this is just before we actually get action. Quote, "Any man more right than his neighbors constitutes a majority of one." End quote.
That's highly significant.
Bach.
Bach, yep.
Did you get that?
Not really. I don't think that's really the theme. I mean, I think they come up with the theme initially, and one of the themes of this movie, which I think is admirable, especially for the time, is about prejudice.
Yeah.
I mean, the movie opens with Mrs. Jacoby's friend, Essie, complaining about that element is moving into the neighborhood. And she's talking about black people and brown people.
Right.
And initially, the son-in-law and the daughter get really huffy about this. It's like, it wasn't that long ago they didn't want Jews here either. It's like, yeah, that's a good point. This actually bookends the film rather nicely, because it ends up being, that comes back a little suddenly, but it does come back. Mm-hmm. I will say the story of this movie is very nice. Yeah. I like the story. I like some of the dialogue is really good. The themes and the ideas are really nice. It's just hard to get past these performances. This is not a movie that has aged well.
No, it hasn't, for a number of reasons. But
I mean, there's Eddie the houseboy, who is, by the way, played by a Hawaiian-born American actor, Mark Marno, but who is supposed to be basically number one son from Charlie Chan.
And he grunts a lot.
Yes, want to watch sumo wrestling, how much, and he loves, we are hep cats here in Japan. Yeah. He drinks a lot of Coca-Cola, and the whole thing, the Japanese fetishizing America. And
but Eddie, who loves this and wants to be a hep cat, and what movie does he go see? Hercules Unchained. You were ripped off, Eddie. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I don't even think that was Alan Steele. I think maybe.
I don't even think that was Steve Reeves anymore.
It wasn't even Miles and Miles O'Keefe. That would come up later. Yeah, Eddie's a character that you're like, oh, I think I want to like. No, I can't like him. He's horrible.
That's the other thing. He's obnoxious. The
performance is so awful.
Yeah.
I mean, he's Asian. I mean, he's Pacific Islander, maybe of Asian descent. I don't know. Born in Hawaii. But his performance actually rivals Alec Guinness. His is just more aggressive, but the accent is just as bad.
It is just as cartoony.
Yeah, and
this guy probably talks like, "Dude, we're gonna go down to La Jolla, hang out for the weekend, man."
Yeah, or something.
Like, oh, what, you want to play Japanese? Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
okay.
There are some. I can't even say they're all Japanese. My guess is it's probably a mix of Chinese, Japanese, Korean, whatever, because Hollywood doesn't care. So there's at least some representation in the movie, but we are sure lucky that they don't have any speaking parts and they don't get credit. So,
yeah. And there's even the things like so many of the tropes when she's checking out. For some reason, the house that Jerry Black is assigned is basically a westernized house. Right. Obviously, it was for the diplomatic corps. And the bathroom, though, is Japanese, and there's all these lingering shots, which is basically, oh, look, isn't foreign stuff weird?
Yeah.
Although I have to admit, I'm sitting there going, that looks like a really cool bathroom. Look at that shower. That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, the tub, too. Like, it's a tub you can just sit in. Like.
Yeah, it's like a mini hot tub. It's so
you're
nice.
Supposed to, yeah.
But they're all playing it for, oh, look, it's got a little stool. Isn't that strange?
I mean, be glad they didn't show the toilet.
Well, they didn't have toilets before 1975. They didn't exist.
Well, in Japan, it was a squatting toilet.
Oh, yeah.
Although now, Japan's toilets are apparently better than some hotels because they sing, they heat up, they play music. You can play games with them. Some of them have actually like hand washing sinks on the back so as not to waste any more water. Yeah. Huh. Japan became the king of the toilet. That's all I can tell you. We see some.
You notice.
I was going to say, we see some Japanese culture. When she goes to Mr. Asano's house, we see a representation of what is somewhat like traditional Japanese living. And it was nice to see that. And the thing that I like about Rosalind Russell's character, Mrs. Jacoby, is when she gets there and she's being served drinks and foods. I have to admit, I totally get the part about the sake. She would drink the tiny little cup of sake, and then she would hold it in her hand because she wasn't sure where to put it. And of course, this means fill me up, and that's what happens. And I got to tell you, that's the best way to drink sake. You just have, I'll just have a little. How many glasses? Teeny tiny glasses did you have? 72.
72.
But she's watching very carefully. She watches what Mr. Asano does. So she's like, I'm in his house. I need to learn to do this his way. She doesn't do what you'd expect, which is in New York, we do it this way, and I don't know why you're not touching the plate, and what is this thing? And
she doesn't do the ugly American of, ew, this looks weird, I'm not going to eat it. She eats everything she's given. And
she does it the way he does.
Exactly. She takes her cues entirely from him, and she does a decent job. I mean, at one point, when he's trying to invite her to stay for dinner and she's trying to decline, and he's saying, you're worried because you think all we eat is raw fish and octopus. And she's like, no, kind of. It's like, at least she's honest enough about that. Yeah. She's like, we do eat that, but I do like, I can assure you everything has been prepared in the tradition of kosher. Like, wow, that's... Actually, that wouldn't be that hard.
No.
Because except for shellfish and bottom-dwelling fish, a lot of Japanese cuisine would be kosher. They don't eat a lot. I mean, there's not a lot of pork. They would just have to leave out the pork. Well, fish is fine. Vegetables are fine.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how orthodox she is, because, of course, if it wasn't actually overseen by the rabbi, it doesn't count, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but she didn't seem to be that orthodox. Although she does do the Sabbath. She does do the Sabbath.
She is pretty observant. She does have, and the menorah she has in her apartment isn't just a Hanukkah menorah, it's a temple menorah. That's why it only has 7 branches.
Oh.
So she's pretty devout, and she does, the Shabbos blessing for Mr. Asano when he visits.
Yeah.
I do have to say, Rosalind Russell, and I'm glad they only make her do this once, does the worst oi I have heard in a long time.
Is it worse than mine?
Yes, it is even worse than yours.
Yeah, and I also like the fact that, and maybe this is traditional, when she's saying the prayer and she's got like her eyes over her hands, that she's whispering it so we can't hear it, because I don't want to hear her Hebrew.
Yeah. No, you do. You whisper the prayer, and you do cover your eyes, and you do make the... No, she did... The ritual was pretty accurate.
Yeah.
And I even like the way she tries to explain some of the Yiddish terms, like kvelling, which she doesn't say right, but she actually describes it really well. And Suris, she oversimplifies it, but sure. Now, I think she's really trying. Rosalind Russell is a terrific actor, and she tries really hard in this. It's just she's playing something she doesn't know how to play.
Yeah.
She's doing a character she can't, that she has a lot of trouble doing.
And it's so weird because it's like, I like the character. It's just the artifice, the outside part is just cringeworthy. Although when she's with Alec Guinness, it's not so bad.
Yeah, honestly, by comparison, her performance looks so much more reasonable next to his. And this is Alec friggin' Guinness. This is one of the great actors of the 20th century. I don't know what was going through his brain when he agreed to do this.
Or when he decided he wouldn't listen to a vocal coach.
Yes, when he thought, I'll wing it. I ate sushi once. I'm sure I can do a Japanese accent.
Oh, this will be funny. I don't know either. And I can't... I do like parts of the character of Asano-san because he is a big businessman. And he does have that lordly air about him, but mostly when, admittedly, Alec Guinness isn't talking. But that you can also see that lonely side to him, that he is a very lonely man, and he does really miss his wife. And there's a point where he approaches her. Actually, mostly it's him approaching her, because initially she's like, you killed my son, I don't want to talk to you. And of course, it wasn't him. And you get to that point. And again, this is one of the many good points about this film, but they get to that point where it's like, look, your government and my government got into a big thing. We just wanted to live our lives. Like the people, like when we saw this in Persepolis, we got to see the people of Iraq, where we never get to see them. We only get to see the military and the government. But it's like, look, we just wanted to live a peaceful life and love each other. That's it. That's all we wanted. And it's like, that's when they can finally come together. So there's parts of both characters that are actually pretty cool. There's some great statements on racism for 1961. That was kind of amazing when when the kids come out and they're like, racism is bad. Of course, later on it's like, racism is bad for other people.
I want to get to that, but the whole thing about how she opens up to him, and at the same time the kids become really suspicious of him. They think, he's just trying to be friends to get some sort of advantage in trade negotiations or pod racing or something. And
I knew that was coming.
Yeah. And honest, I have to say, those kids are jerks.
Well,
her kids are kind of jerks.
Here's the sad part. Jerry starts off as a really good guy. Because Jerry is like, I'm doing this, I know I'm moving around, and initially he doesn't want to bring the mother. He didn't want to bring Mrs. Jacoby with them. And rightfully so. He's like, look, she wouldn't know anybody. She wouldn't know the culture. She wouldn't be comfortable. And eventually his wife is like, look, I want her to come. And if she doesn't want to come, I don't want to go. And he's like, okay, let's make it work. And he does. And Jerry is thinking about his wife, and he seems like a good guy. It's just when it comes to this one thing, suddenly, Jerry feels threatened.
Once he's caught up in his work, once he's caught up in actually doing his job, the job takes over everything. Again, also very believable. This happens to people a lot.
Sure. And he's the only breadwinner.
They're in another country, and if he screws up, they'll go off a disgrace. And the thing is, if you're in the State Department, you screw up a foreign assignment, it's really hard to get another good one. He'll end up being posted in Iowa or some such.
Yeah, but he was making $10,000 a year in 1961, which is not chicken feed.
That ain't chump change right there.
So
no, it's difficult, but
for the most part, I get Jerry. It's like he's very uptight because he's in a very difficult situation. He's got to make a good name for himself. He just got a big promotion. It's a huge trade deal, and so on and so forth. And when he gets pissed off and thinks that Mrs. Jacoby has said something wrong that pissed off Mr. Asano, to be fair, there's absolutely nothing there to show him that it was not her, and that's the only connection, because he was singled out with Mr. Asano basically saying, I'm not talking to you people anymore. And he tries to approach Mrs. Jacoby as gently as he can, but he needs the information. He's like, look, my job's suddenly, I've been here one day and my job's already at stake. What is going on? What's happening? And his wife is like, leave her alone, leave her alone.
Yeah, I gotta say though, as a guy who's supposed to be a diplomat, he's awfully blunt about things with her.
And their relationship from both of them is sadly initially really good and then suddenly very bad.
Yeah, it changes awfully quickly.
Which is too bad. To the good part of the movie, it helps flush out some more of this racism because Mrs. Jacoby gets over herself and gets over her hatred of the Japanese because her son died because of a Japanese attack and starts seeing Mr. Asano for who he is. And the kids, who have supposedly been open-minded and are all talk, get into a situation where they're confronted with it. In this case, the Jewish mother is now possibly going to be taking up with the Japanese businessman, and now suddenly, oh, well, that's too close for home. We can't have mother. You know it wouldn't work. And the mother's, I love her expression. You know, again, the artifice is the problem, but I love Rosalind Russell's expression when the daughter basically says, you know it would never work. And she looks like at her like, what language are you just speaking?
Yeah, and as she says, she calls back to, remember how upset you were when Essie said that about the bad element.
Yeah.
And then just the quote is perfect. It's like, it's different when it strikes home. That's not only really sharp, but that is still true.
Yep.
There are a lot of people who can be very open-minded in the abstract, and then if their kid brings home someone of a different race or religion, they freak out.
Yeah.
And as she looks at them and says, let me just ask you this. Who's bigoted here? Yeah. It's like suddenly this movie becomes Guess Who's Coming to Dinner.
Yeah. And there's some really good points. But then you look over to the right and there's Alec Guinness and it's like, ah!
Yeah, it's like, you want to keep company with the Japanese man? Okay, where is he? No, Mr. Guinness, could you move? I think there's supposed to be a Japanese guy in here somewhere. Not someone who's obviously Lord of the Reptile people.
They're coming, you know. Yeah,
I do have to. That was one thing I do have to say. I was, just as the story, their relationship moves very fast. They move from being friends to him thinking about marrying her in like a scene.
Considering the rest of the movie moves so slowly.
Yes, exactly. Again, I could see it. It's just that it kind of comes a little out of left field.
Yeah,
they're just starting to become friends, and suddenly, and then he's like, no, I would like to accompany you to plays, concerts, and national events. Which, by the way, is the most adorable way of asking somebody to go out with you. I always wished I had an opportunity to say that to some woman, or just, would you be interested in accompanying me to plays, concerts, and national events? I don't know why. It's just so classy. And and she goes from being, in effect, shocked but flattered. And it's like, oh, God, that's ridiculous. By the time she gets home, she's thinking about it.
Yeah. And the other thing,
she
too,
goes from this,
is she does something that's very good. Again, showing that she is a good actor, she's just not a good Jew, is when she first meets Mr. Asano, she's sitting on a deck chair, and he's 2 deck chairs over, and she accidentally knocks a magazine off her chair. And Mr. Asano gets up and hands it to her, and she does not make eye contact with him, which is very telling of somebody who is thinking they're a good person and wanting to be polite, but still can't deal with the fact that there's one of those people over there. And that was really well done. However,
she nods.
Yep.
So it's like she still has her manners, but she can't look at him.
Right. But we have 2 problems going on here. One, like you said, she gets over herself very quickly. 2, I don't know what he sees in her.
Oh, come on. First off, it's Rosalind Russell. Rosalind Russell has amazing presence and just looks really cool.
Yeah, but it's why is he so willing and suddenly interested in her? And as somebody who's as traditionally portrayed as Asano is, why is he so quick to be interested in an American woman? I don't know.
That's the point. I don't know. It's not clear. The closest they come is basically she says that he sees his wife in her. Right. So maybe there were similar qualities, but we're just guessing at that. We don't know. Yeah. We're not really told. That part doesn't bother me quite as much. Some people are just immediately attracted to other people, or they find other people really appealing. And the
very
fact
tall.
is, she's also in many ways very sweet. As they point out, she's on the boat for like 3 or 4 days, and she knows everyone on the boat. She's gotten their life history. She knows, that couple, he's English, she's American. They met here. He knows their children's. She's very outgoing. Again, this is also a bit of the cliche about, the Yenta, the older Jewish woman. Unfortunately, there's some basis in fact to that. We can be really nosy.
Hey,
and
let's check out Yentl.
we do like to know everything about everybody, but I don't know if that's a Jewish thing or a generational thing.
So what you're saying is that she's a huge security risk, is what you're saying.
Oh God, yeah.
It's like answering all those quizzes on Facebook.
Yeah, no, she would be the worst person at all to get one of those Nigerian prince emails.
He's a very nice man. He was married 3 times and has 6 kids, although one of them died. It's very sad.
Yep. That's the thing. She would probably go, no, I didn't give him any money. I know he just fritter it away. I just don't think that's good for him at this point. I'm trying to set him up with this nice lady at the consulate. Yeah. But anyway.
Yeah. Did you have any questions or anything you wanted to bring up besides your notes? Because we are getting.
I did. I did. I had a couple of things. Also, I just wanted to bring up one thing where she's talking when Mrs. Jacoby is talking about how she's learned Japanese. The line "it still makes me laugh" is when she's explaining, and I know how to say "you're welcome," which sounds like "don't touch my mustache."
Do tashimashite.
Don't touch my mustache. That's it. And it actually does kind of sound like "don't touch my mustache," and I laugh every time she says it. I can't help it. But yeah, I did have a couple of questions.
Cool, I did too.
When we're looking at Alec Guinness' performances, what are the stereotypical characteristics that he really leans into, that he just really plays up?
The R's and the L's.
Yeah, that's a biggie. The R's and the L's.
The stoic nature. The
immovable face, although some of that's probably the Scotch tape holding his eyelids back.
The whole, his lack of expression. That's for me.
That's more than enough, really.
Yeah, because it's just so egregious. It's just awful.
Yeah.
How about
the speech patterns? Really? No, that was pretty much the speech patterns. Apart from this rather gaping wound in the movie. Mm-hmm. Does this movie feel sincere?
I had that question too. Despite its missteps, does it seem sincere? I think it is. I actually think it's trying. I just think it's very misguided. It's. You might as well have somebody come out and pledging for equality between whites and blacks, and they're dressed up doing minstrel shows stuff, right? It's just okay. We're talking about all races getting along and stuff, but we're not going to have any of them that actually get to talk. It's just weird. So I think they meant well. It was just such a stumble in those 2 major roles that it's just like, okay, whatever. And it's like, and the sad thing is at the time, it probably didn't bother people. Maybe people did see something good in this and ignored the fact that Alec Guinness can't even say the word Japan, at least not with a straight face. And Rosalind Russell has probably never been to a kosher deli. I don't know. But how about you? Do you think so?
Yeah, I think the basic story is actually a good story. I think the message in the movie is nice. I think the fact that the way it ends, which is with this possibility that they may eventually develop a romance, I think that works. Again, I just think it's a question of the casting, and the casting is a major part.
Yeah. I had one last one before we have to wrap this up. If this was remade today, besides a huge rewrite, who would we cast? My first choice was Ken Watanabe. Ken Watanabe would be great as Asano-san.
He'd be good. I was thinking, I was trying to think of if you recast in 1961, I'd like to see Toshiro Mifune. Yeah, it wouldn't be great.
Does he have any warmth?
Jacoby-san! Whole movie would be yelling. Everyone would be terrified of him. It would be awesome. He could totally hold his own with her.
Who would you pick for Mrs. Jacoby? That's a tough one.
Oh, that's tough. Honestly, I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
Also, I'd just like to point out, I'm pretty sure nobody in this film is Jewish. Like the kids, I don't think are. Danton, I
don't think so. I really don't think either of the kids were Jewish.
Yeah.
Oh, excuse me. Essie is.
Oh, right. May Ketzel.
May Ketzel is Jewish and is in fact New York Jewish.
She's from New York?
Yeah,
I couldn't tell.
Hard to believe with that accent, yeah.
Oh, Popeye! Yeah, it's actually really fun to see the woman who's done that. She actually was doing that voice, I think, up into the 80s. Like, if you
Wasn't
saw,
she
like,
also Aunt Bluebell for Scott Towles or something?
I don't know. She might have been. But she did the voice of Betty Boop in Roger Rabbit.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Crazy. But we got to get to the end because I'm out of my notes and it's that time.
Yep, it is.
The roundup.
So, Max.
So, Mike.
Ha!
Damn.
Besides, I can edit it the way I want to. But, Max, so you'd seen this as a kid. Haven't seen it in decades. I win! What did you think now looking at it through a slightly more mature and a slightly more hopefully broad-minded lens, although you were always pretty broad-minded, but...
Well, it's complicated. Part of me still really likes this movie. I do. It's so sweet, and the message is nice, and even though it's so over the top, I like Rosalind Russell trying so hard to be Jewish. She just tries so hard. And I believe, we were saying Alec Guinness wouldn't listen to the dialect coach and didn't. He actually apparently went to Japan for a while to try to study the culture.
Didn't work.
Apparently it didn't work. And,
nope.
But I believe she actually put work into the dialect, into the accent, into the culture, because I think she did that really well. It's not her fault she can't pronounce Yiddish that well. But it's... The scenes with Alec Guinness take me out of the movie. And the stuff when it's just them, apart from the fact that, honestly, a lot of the time I just want to slap her kids because they really get on my nerves.
Yeah.
Again, that's not necessarily bad. That's kind of what they're supposed to do.
Right.
I still really enjoy it, but you have to take it with such a grain of salt, and you cannot... I can't just gloss over what the thing with Alec Guinness. It's so insulting. If you've ever even, never mind met, if you've ever seen a Japanese person, it's incredibly insulting. And it's really hard to get around that now. So, I don't know. I would still recommend seeing this movie, but brace yourself. And be aware. Think about this. Look at the things he's exaggerating. Look what they're playing up. This is what people thought you had to do to play Japanese. I don't know. It's difficult because that movie was a real part of my childhood, and it's hard to look at it and see such damning things about it. And they are there. We're not making this up. People haven't made this up. It's absolutely true. What about you?
Such a grain of salt you have to swallow to watch this movie. See?
Wow, that's bad.
I'm only slightly less successful than Rosalind Russell. And just because it is so easy to do and so insulting, I will not do the R&L thing because it's just awful. Yeah. I actually really love Japanese culture, so it's especially hard to watch this and just wrong. Yeah. Oh, and wrong. I'm in the same boat as you. The one thing I will say about the film as a film is it is slow.
It is very slow.
And the thing is that there's parts of this film that I wish were longer. I actually wish that their relationship built a little bit more slowly because it's a little sudden, and I like what they're trying to do. Yep. They're basically trying to take two cultures that are very disparate and showing that there's common ground and even a potential for love. We talked about the fact that the film is actually trying to make an anti-racism point. It's just doing it so badly that it's almost lost in a wash of hatred. I don't know. That's not hatred. It's just utter
just tone deafness.
Yeah. I don't think that this film as it stands is something I can recommend only because of its pacing. Today's world is not going to sit there and watch a film that's basically a play. They need more things happening. I mean, maybe if there had been a car chase or, a bank heist or something, that would have livened it up. I love the idea of this. Me too. As a kid, I watched this. Why? I don't know. It is so not a film that kids would watch. But like you, I watched it with my mother. But the performances, I mean, most of what I know from Jewish culture comes from, Max. And even I could tell Rosalind Russell, I don't even think she's had a bagel. Or if she did, it had bacon in it. And spoiler, don't do that.
No, seriously.
So if it's a film that you've loved or have fond memories of, just be aware of what you're watching. I don't know how you can't be. It's almost like as if, literally a Wookiee walked into the screen and you didn't see the Wookiee. I don't know how that would work. How would you not notice Alec Guinness's horrible performance? It's not as bad as some of the other ones we'll see in this series, but I guess if you're a modern audience, the pacing I think is going to throw you off. The racism is terrible, but it's trying to make a good point, and I think it does have a nice story, and it is trying to be sincere. It's just very, very bad at it. But Max, we have a poll question. If you would go over that and how people can contact us, that'd be great.
I would. Yeah, again, this week's question is there a particular country where you really enjoy seeing movies set? Which one and why? And is there a country you'd like to see more movies set in? And, of course, you can answer this on one of the social medias we have on Facebook or the Twitter at Max Mike Movies. You can also leave a comment on our website, maxmikemovies.com, where all of our back shows are, and our front shows for that matter. You can email us at maxmikemovies.com. And as usual, you, of course, can listen to us on the podcast app of your choice, including Spotify, iHeartRadio, and many others. Some parts may be made out of chicken, not available in every state. Sorry, Tennessee. And
take a breath.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. But so... What triumph of racial awareness are we going to be watching next week, Mike?
Triumph of the bread.
Triumph of the white bread.
Thank you for laying bread into your life. So we're going to stick with part of the theme. I mean, the main part, which of course is whitewashing. We're going to stick with white people being cast in Asian roles. It's going to be a little different, though, this time around, because it's not going to be, thankfully, white people trying to portray Asian people. It's just, hey, wasn't this originally set or written by Asian people, and now there's no Asian people in it?
So this is luckily, it's whitewashing the character itself.
And the entire story, yeah. Luckily, this didn't happen anywhere near the present day. It's at least 2 or 3 years old. This is a little film called Ghost in the Shell.
The live-action version.
Yeah, because the cartoons are great, and of course they are, in fact, made by Japanese people. But this is a film that was originally a Japanese story. It was written by Japanese people. It was animated by Japanese people in Japan. And the short answer to it is, now it's not.
Yes, it's now starring noted Jewish person Scarlett Johansson.
Huh?
Yeah, she's Jewish.
Really?
Yeah. Part Scandinavian, part, I think it's Ashkenazi Jew. Yep.
I thought you just decided because you like her.
Well, yeah, but...
We're also going to have a little drinking game for next week's movie, so you can join us. Every time somebody says the title of the film in the film, Ghost in the Shell, you can take a drink. So come get drunk with us next week as we try to stamp out racism in Hollywood.
This has been a co-production of The Voice of Max and The Movie Wrench.